What's up everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I break down the individual stories in the timeline so you can just jump around as you see fit. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. Let's jump right in.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off with phishing. Hellman Worldwide is warning customers of an increase in fraudulent calls and emails regarding payment transfer and bank account changes after a recent ransomware attack. The attack took place on December 9th and forced the logistics company to shut down its systems to contain the spread of the virus. However, by the time the firm's IT team responded, the actors had already exfiltrated sensitive files from the access servers to be used as a pressure lever in the ransom payment negotiation stage. Through an update on its site, Hellman Worldwide admits that the forensic investigation that followed has confirmed a data breach, but are still investigating exactly what was stolen. In the meantime, they are receiving multiple reports from clients who are targeted by actors that exploit the stolen data. Hellman Worldwide is an international logistics firm with a turnover of 2.53 billion euros, roughly $2.85 billion, 263 offices in 56 countries, 10,601 employees, and they handle 16 million shipments per year. Its partner network is even more extensive, encompassing another 20,500 agents in 489 offices, so the opportunities for BEC, or business email compromise, scammers, and phishing actors are practically endless. Bleepy Computer has found that the actor responsible for the ransomware attack against Hellman Worldwide is RansomX, a threat group currently undergoing a resurgence. The actors published all the stolen data on their leak portal, totaling 70.64 gigabytes of documents, credentials, correspondence, agreements, orders, etc. The fact that all this sensitive data is offered for download to anyone is directly relevant to the uptick in fraud calls and emails reported by Hellman Worldwide. We now move on to patches. While the experts were warning that threat actors are actively attempting to exploit a second vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2021-45046, disclosed in the Log4j library, a third security vulnerability made the headlines. Let's analyze the timeline for the Log4j vulnerabilities. The first vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2021-44228, or aka Log4 Shell, made the headlines last week after Chinese security researcher P0RZ9 publicly disclosed a proof of concept exploit for it. The issue is a critical remote code execution zero-day vulnerability that affects the Apache Log4j Java-based logging library. The impact of the issue is devastating. Thousands of organizations worldwide are potentially exposed to attacks, and security experts are already reporting exploitation attempts in the wild. Immediately after the disclosure of the exploit, Microsoft researchers reported that nation-state actors from China, Iran, North Korea, and Turkey are now abusing the Log4 Shell, or CVE 2021-44228, in the Log4j library in their campaigns. Some of the groups exploiting the vulnerability are China-linked Hafnium and Iran-linked Phosphorus. The former group has used the flaw to attack virtualization infrastructure, the latter to deploy ransomware. The Apache Software Foundation quickly released a patch 2.15.0 version for the Log4 Shell vulnerability, again CVE 2021-44228, but this fix partially addressed the flaw in certain non-default configurations. An attacker with control over thread context map input data when the login configuration uses a non-default pattern layout with either a context lookup, for example, CTX login ID, or a thread context map pattern, for example, %X or MDT or MDT capitalized, can craft malicious input data using a JNDI lookup pattern, triggering a denial of service condition. Both issues were addressed with the release of the Log4j 2.16.0 version that fixed the CVE 2021-44056 by removing support for message lookup patterns and disabling JNDI functionality by default. But the bad news just didn't end, because researchers at security firm Praetorian warned of a third security vulnerability, the Log4j version 2.150, that was released to fix the initial Log4j. This third vulnerability can be exploited by attackers to exfiltrate sensitive data in certain circumstances. The Apache Software Foundation was forced to release the third version in a week, version 2.17.0, to fix a high-severity denial-of-service vulnerability in the Log4j 2.16 track to CVE 2021-45105. The CVE 2021-45046 initially rated as low severity, but it was then had its severity increased to a critical 9.0 by the Apache Software Foundation because experts found a new way to bypass the second fix released by the Foundation. The CVE 2021-45105 vulnerability received a CVSS score of 7.5. It's a denial-of-service flaw that impacts Log4j 2.16. The experts pointed out that even if JNDI lookups were disabled in version 2.16, self-referential lookups remained a possibility under certain circumstances. VMware has addressed a critical server-side request forgery vulnerability tracked to CVE 2021-22054 in the Workspace ONE UEM Console. An attacker with network access to UEM could exploit the vulnerability to access sensitive data in the management console. An attacker can trigger the issue by sending unauthenticated requests to the vulnerable software. Impacted versions include 2109, Workspace ONE patch 21.9.0.13 and above, 2105, 2102, 2101, 2011, 2010, 2008, and 2007. The virtualization giant has rated the issue as critical and assigned it a CVS's version 3 base score of 9.1. The SSRF vulnerability in Workspace ONE UEM Console was privately reported to the company, which released security patches and workarounds. The company fixed the issue with the release of VMware Workspace ONE UEM Console versions 21.5037, 21.2.0.27, 20.11.0.40, 20.0.8.36, VMware Workspace ONE UEM patch 21.9.0.13, and above also fixed the vulnerability. The company also shared the following required actions in guidance for addressing the CVE 2021-22054. Shared and dedicated SaaS. None. The issue has been mitigated across all SaaS environments through infrastructure changes, which will remain in place until VMware Cloud Operations has deployed the necessary patches. Please subscribe to this article or to the article to be notified when updates are available. On-premise, deploy the patch associated with the supported version of Workspace OEM that your environment is on. Alternatively, you may implement the short-term mitigation that they noted in their report. Adobe has issued critical warnings for more than 60 vulnerabilities in multiple products running on Windows and macOS machines. The vulnerabilities can be exploited by threat actors for code execution, privilege escalation, and denial-of-service attacks. The company said it was not aware of in-the-wild exploitation of any of the documented vulnerabilities. Adobe has addressed 3 critical and important vulnerabilities in Photoshop for Windows and macOS. An attacker could trigger these flaws for arbitrary code execution and memory leak in the context of the current user. The vulnerability details include out-of-bounds write, or CWE 787 arbitrary code execution, with a critical with a 7.8 score, access of memory location after end of buffer, CWE 788, which is memory leak, with a score of 5.5. Buffer overflow, or CWE 120, arbitrary code execution with critical score of 7.8. CWE 2021-43018 has been reported by Matt Powell working with Trend Micro's Zero-Day Initiative, while CVE 2021-43020 and CWE 2021-44184 have been reported by Kushal Arvind Shah of Fortinet's FortiGuard Labs. Adobe also fixed multiple code execution vulnerabilities in the Adobe Experience Manager with CVS severity scores that were ranging from 5.4 up to 9.8. Microsoft's December 2021 Patch Tuesday addressed 67 vulnerabilities in Microsoft Windows and Windows Components, ASP.NET Core, and Visual Studio, Azure Bot Framework SDK, Internet Storage Name Service, Defender for IoT, Edge, Chromium-based version, Microsoft Office and Office Components, SharePoint Server, PowerShell, Remote Desktop Client, Windows Hyper-V, Windows Mobile Device Management, Windows Remote Access Connection Manager, TCP/IP, and the Windows Update Stack. The vulnerabilities addressed by Microsoft were 21 elevation of privilege vulnerabilities, 26 remote code execution vulnerabilities, 10 information disclosure vulnerabilities, 3 denial of service vulnerabilities, and 7 spoofing vulnerabilities. 7 of the issues addressed by Microsoft are rated as critical, while the remaining ones are rated as important in severity. One of the vulnerabilities fixed by Microsoft tracked to CVE 2021-43890 is under active exploitation. We have investigated reports of a spoofing vulnerability in AppX installer that affects Microsoft Windows. Microsoft is aware of attacks that attempt to exploit this vulnerability by using specially crafted packages that include the malware family known as Emotet, TrickBot, or BasilLoader, reads the advisory published by Microsoft. An attacker could exploit the vulnerability by tricking the victims into opening a specially crafted attachment sent via phishing messages. Google released security updates to address 5 vulnerabilities in the Chrome web browser, including a high-severity zero-day flaw tracked as CVE 2021-4102 exploited in the wild. The CVE 2021-4102 flaw is a use-after-free issue in the V8 JavaScript and WebAssembly engine. Its exploitation could lead to the execution of arbitrary code or data corruption. Google is aware of reports that an exploit for CVE 2021-4102 exists in the wild, reads the advisory published by Google, which did not share additional info regarding these attacks. The vulnerability was reported by an anonymous researcher on December 9th, 2021. Google has already addressed 17 zero-day vulnerabilities in Chrome this year, and below is a full... Google has already addressed 17 zero-day vulnerabilities in Chrome this year. We move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. Researchers from KnownSec 404 team and Sangford Threat Intelligence team reported that the TellYouThePass ransomware resurged and is exploiting the Apache Log4j CVE 2021-44228 flaw to target both Linux and Windows systems. The TellYouThePass ransomware has remained inactive since the summer of 2020. The threat mainly affected Chinese users. Twitter user @80vul reported that a piece of the ransomware was employed in an attack on an old system that contained an internet-facing Log4j2 RCE vulnerability. According to Curated Intelligence, ID Ransomware Metric confirmed a spike in the submissions for this ransomware. As reported by Bleeping Computer, the researcher German Fernandez also spotted a Linux version of the ransomware that is also able to harvest SSH keys and moves laterally throughout victims' networks. Unfortunately, TellYouThePass isn't the unique ransomware exploiting isn't the only ransomware exploiting the Log4Shell flaw in its operations. The Conti ransomware gang is the first ransomware operation exploiting the Log4Shell vulnerability to target VMware vCenter servers. Bitdefender also reported that threat actors are exploiting the flaw to spread a ransomware dubbed Khonsari being installed directly via Log4Shell exploits. Speaking of Conti ransomware, the Conti ransomware gang is the first professional race or ransomware that leverages Log4Shell exploit to compromise VMware vCenter server installs. The ransomware group used the exploit to target internal devices that are not protected. Conti operators run a private ransomware as a service. The malware appeared in the threat landscape at the end of December 2019 and was distributed through TrickBot infections. Experts speculate the operators are members of a Russia-based cybercrime group known as Wizard Spider. Since August 2020, the group has launched its leak site to threaten its victim to release the stolen data. Conti operators claim to have already compromised at least 500 organizations worldwide. Recently, the Conti gang used the attack on the Australian energy CS Energy, and they threatened to leak the stolen files. After the disclosure of the exploit, Microsoft researchers reported that nation-state actors from China, Iran, North Korea, and Turkey are now abusing the Log4Shell CVE 2021-44228 in the Log4j library in their campaigns. Some of the groups exploiting the vulnerability are China-linked Hafnium and Iran-linked Phosphorus. The former group is using the flaw to attack virtualization infrastructure, the latter to deploy the ransomware. We've already heard this in a previous story. The IT giant also confirmed that the exploitation of the Log4Shell to deploy the Khonsari ransomware, as discussed by Bitdefender recently. Microsoft experts also state that multiple access brokers have begun using the Log4Shell vulnerability to gain initial access to target networks and then sell it to ransomware as a service affiliates. Researchers from threat intelligence firm Advintel, the Conti ransomware gang started attempting to exploit the Log4Shell issue the day after the disclosure of the exploit. The Conti gang and its affiliates started targeting VMware vCenter servers because the virtualization giant has yet to release a fix for the flaw. Western Digital is urging customers to update their Western Digital MyCloud devices to the latest firmware version to continue receiving security updates on MyCloud OS firmware that is reaching the end of support. The company announced the end support for prior generations of MyCloud operating system, including MyCloud OS 3. Devices running no longer supported firmware will not receive security updates in the future, with the result that they will be more exposed to cyber attacks. For this reason, it's essential to disconnect these devices from the internet, disable remote access, and use a strong, unique password. Customers using MyCloud OS 5 compatible devices will no longer support prior generations of MyCloud OS starting from January 15th, 2022. Compatible devices must be upgraded to MyCloud OS 5 to continue to allow remote access to their device, since the security updates and technical support will no longer be provided for MyCloud OS 3. Threat actors have stolen credit cards belonging to 1,813,224 customers of affiliated online sports gear sites. The affected websites: Tackle Warehouse LLC, which sells fishing gear; Running Warehouse LLC, which sells running apparel; Tennis Warehouse LLC, guess what they sell? Tennis apparel; and Skate Warehouse, I wonder what they sell. Oh, skateboards and skating apparel. According to the law firm representing the four websites, the security breach took place on October 1st, 2021, but the websites discovered it on October 15th. The attackers had access to the personal information and credit card information of the customers, including full CVV data. On November 29th, 2021, the company confirmed the personal and financial data of its customers were stolen, including full name, financial account data, financial account number, credit card number with CVV, debit card number with CVV, website account passwords. On December 16th, 2021, the four websites notified the affected customers. This time, the sites have yet to disclose the cause of the security breach. Impacted users are recommended to monitor their bank account and credit card statements and immediately report any suspicious transactions. The bad and surprising news is that the websites are not offering an identity protection service to the impacted customers, which should be a crime. Anyway, experts at Checkpoint Research have monitored the resurgence of the Phorpiex botnet, an old threat that was involved in sextortion spam campaigns, cryptojacking, cryptocurrency clipping, or substituting the original wallet address saved in the clipboard with the attacker's wallet address during a transaction, and ransomware attacks in the past. The new variant, dubbed TWISD, could export or could operate without active command and control servers in peer-to-peer mode. Each of the infected computers can act as a server and send commands to other bots in a chain. Experts estimated that in 1 year, it's been allowed to steal crypto assets worth roughly $500,000. The botnet has been active since at least 2016, but in August, the criminal organization behind the Phorpiex botnet have shut down their operations and put the source code of the botnet for sale on a cybercrime forum in a dark web. From the announcement, the botnet was likely operated by two individuals. It is unclear if the botnet was actually sold. Checkpoint experts noticed that less than 2 weeks later, the command and control servers were back online to distribute the new TWISD variant. In 2021, Phorpiex infections were found in 96 countries. Most of the victims are located in Ethiopia, Nigeria, and India. Phorpiex Crypto Clipper supports more than 30 wallets for different blockchains. The Phorpiex Crypto Clipper supports over 30 wallets for different blockchains, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, Dash, Monero, and Zilliqa. We focused only on the most popular blockchains, Bitcoin and Ethereum. We managed to find 60 unique Bitcoin wallets and 37 Ethereum wallets used by the Phorpiex Crypto Clipper. Many wallets have been active for several years, reads the analysis published by the Checkpoint. In a 1-year period between November 2020 and November 2021, Phorpiex bots hijacked 969 transactions, stole 3.64 Bitcoins, 55.87 Ethereum, and $55,000 in ERC20 tokens. Experts noticed that the total value of the stolen money could be even higher because they didn't include other blockchains in their investigation. The average stolen value in a hijacked transaction decreases when the cryptocurrency price rises. Malware with the functionality of a worm or a virus can continue to spread autonomously for a long time without any further involvement by its creators. However, in most cases, the creators need to use command and control servers to control the bots to be able to profit from the botnet. We should note that for a botnet on the scale of Phorpiex, it is quite difficult to find reliable hosting that does not block the command and control server, concludes the analysis. The creators are further disadvantaged if the IP addresses of the command and control servers are added to deny lists, thereby reducing the efficiency of controlling the botnet. Checking the IP address of the command and control server can be very difficult. Now, the Phorpiex botnet uses techniques that effectively achieve its goals without command and control servers. Again, each instance of the Phorpiex install or malware can be its own server to talk with and communicate with other infected bots within the chain. Kaspersky researchers reported that tens of thousands of devices belonging to industrial and government organizations worldwide have been hit by the PseudoManuscrypt spyware. The name PseudoManuscrypt comes from the similarities with the manuscript malware used by the North Korean linked Lazarus apt group in attacks aimed at the defense industry. The experts revealed that at least 7.2% of all systems targeted by the PseudoManuscrypt malware are part of industrial control systems used by organizations in multiple industries, including engineering, building automation, energy, manufacturing, construction, utilities, and water management. The malware had attacked at least 35,000 systems in 195 countries between January and November 2021, which is uncommon for targeted attacks carried out by nation-state actors. The PseudoManuscrypt loader is delivered via a malware-as-a-service platform that distributes the malicious code in pirated software installer archives. Experts also observe the spyware distributed via the glupteba botnet. PseudoManuscrypt supports a broad range of spying capabilities such as stealing VPN connection data, logging key presses, capturing screenshots and videos of the screen, recording sound with the microphone, stealing clipboard data, and operating system event log data, which also makes stealing RDP authentication data possible, and much more. Nearly a third, 29.4%, of non-ICS computers targeted by the malware are located in Russia, 10.2%, India, 10%, and Brazil, 9.3%, while most of the ICS hit by the spyware was in India, Vietnam, and Russia. The spyware uses a KCP protocol to connect to the command control server, which is uncommon for malware. In the past, the KCP protocol has been used by the China-linked apt41 in its attacks on industrial organizations. Lenovo laptops, including ThinkPad and Yoga families, are affected by a privilege elevation issue that resides in the IM controller service, allowing attackers to execute commands with admin privileges. The vulnerabilities tracked to CVE 2021-3922 and CVE 2021-3969 are a race condition vulnerability and a time of check, time of use vulnerability, respectively. The flaws affect the IM controller service, or System Interface Foundation service, of all Lenovo Systems Interface Foundation versions below 1.1.20.3. The Lenovo System Interface Foundation service provides interfaces for multiple features, including system power management, system optimization, driver and application updates. For this reason, it's not recommended to disable it. The vulnerability was reported to Lenovo by researchers at NCC Group on October 29th, 2021, and the vendor addressed it with the release of a security update on November 17th, 2021. This week, the company publicly disclosed the vulnerability. CVE 2021-3922, a race condition vulnerability was reported in IM Controller, a software component of Lenovo System Interface Foundation that could allow a local attacker to connect and interact with the IM Controller child process named Pipe. CVE 2021-3969, a time of check, time of use vulnerability was reported in IM Controller, a software component of Lenovo System Interface Foundation that could allow an attacker to elevate privileges. According to NCC Group, the IM Controller service comes installed on certain Lenovo devices. It runs as the system user and periodically executes child processes that perform system configuration and maintenance tasks. An attacker can exploit the vulnerabilities to elevate its privileges to system and take over the vulnerable device. The vulnerability resides in the way the IM Controller service handles the execution of highly privileged child processes, which allows an unprivileged attacker with local access to the system to elevate privileges. The flawed vulnerable component periodically starts child processes to perform tasks, and each of them opens a named pipe server to which any user on the system can connect. The researchers noticed that the child process does not validate the source of the connection. This means it'll begin accepting commands from the attacker using high-performance file system synchronization routines after the race condition has been exploited. Microsoft researchers reported that nation-state actors from China, Iran, North Korea, and Turkey are now abusing the Log4 shell, or CVE 2021-4428, and the Log4j library in their campaigns. We saw this in a previous story about other attackers. Now it's Microsoft talking about the state-sponsored attackers. Some of the groups exploiting the vulnerability are China-linked Hafnium and Iran-linked Phosphorus. The former group is using the flaw to attack virtualization infrastructure, the latter to deploy ransomware. Microsoft experts also state that multiple access brokers have begun using the Log4Shell vulnerability to gain initial access to target networks and then sell it to ransomware as a service affiliates. Most of the traffic observed by Microsoft is associated with mass scanning for vulnerable systems conducted by both threat actors and security researchers. The IT giant reported a rapid uptick of the Log4Shell vulnerability into existing botnets, including Mirai and Tsunami, backdoor aimed at bot Linux and Windows systems. both Linux and Windows systems. Microsoft also warns of ongoing exploitation on non-Microsoft host Minecraft servers and urges Minecraft customers running their own servers to deploy the latest Minecraft server update to protect their users. Microsoft also confirmed that the exploitation of the Log4Shell to deploy the Khonsari Ransomware, as discussed by Bitdefender recently. Microsoft Defender antivirus detected a small number of Khonsari-related attacks being launched from compromised Minecraft clients connected to modified Minecraft servers running a vulnerable version of Log4j2 via the use of a third-party Minecraft mods loader. So we talked about Microsoft releasing information about Log4Shell being exploited on Microsoft servers. They also pointed to the information from Bitdefender. Now here comes Bitdefender, who discovered that threat actors are attempting to exploit the Log4Shell vulnerability CVE 2021-44228 to deliver the new Khonsari ransomware on Windows machines. Experts warn that threat actors are attempting to exploit the Log4Shell flaw to deliver the new Khonsari ransomware on Windows machines. The attackers exploited the Log4Shell remote code execution vulnerability to download a .NET binary from a remote server that encrypts the files on the target machine and adds the extension .khonsari to each file. The malware also drops a ransomware note that it requests the payment of the ransom in Bitcoin. The ransomware note is written in C, user's desktop, how to get your files back.txt. But Khonsari ransomware does not encrypt files with the extensions .ini and .lnk. It uses the AES 128 CBC using padding mode 0's algorithm for encryption. Kaspersky researchers spotted malicious actors while deploying a previously undiscovered binary and Internet Information Services web server module dubbed Owowa on Microsoft Exchange Outlook web access servers to steal credentials and for remote code execution. Owowa is a C# developed .NET 4.0 assembly that is intended to be loaded as a module within an IIS web server that also exposes Exchange's Outlook web access, or Owowa. Reads the analysis published by Kaspersky. When loaded this way, Owowa will steal credentials that are entered by any user on the Owowa login page and will allow a remote operator to run commands on the underlying server. Attackers designed the Owowa module to inspect HTTP requests and responses by hooking the pre-send request content event. Once a user has successfully authenticated on the Owowa authentication webpage, the Owowa module captures its credentials. The module was most likely compiled between late 2020 and April 2021. The module verifies the successful authentication by checking that the Owowa application is sending an authentication token back to the user. The username, password, user's IP address, and current timestamp are stored in a file at C Windows temp and then blah 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 .db.ses .data. They're encrypted using the RSA algorithm with a hard-coded public key stored as an XML blob. The attackers can exploit the Owowa module by entering specifically crafted commands within the username and password fields in the Owowa authentication page of a compromised server. Then the module will respond to these commands to the IIS web server and display the results of the operator instead of displaying the Owowa login error messages. By inserting the string blah 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 in the Owowa username, the module will return the encrypted credentials log encoded in base 64. If the Owowa username is blah 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 blah, the module deletes the content of the encrypted credentials log and returns the OK string encrypted using RSA, while if the OWA username is another username, Owowa executes the command that is typed in the Owowa password field using PowerShell on the compromised server. Then, the result of the command is encrypted and returned to the operator. Most of the victims were government organizations in Malaysia, Mongolia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Kaspersky was not able to link Owowa to any known threat actor due to the lack of data regarding the deployment of the module. Iran-linked apt group Seedworm, aka Mercury, aka Muddy Water, aka Temp Zagros, or Static Kitten, is behind a new cyber espionage campaign targeting telecommunications and IT service providers in the Middle East and Asia, Symantec warns. The Seedworm has been active since at least 2017. The recent campaign has been conducted over the past 6 months and targeted entities in Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Thailand, and Laos. The threat actors don't use custom malware and instead rely on legitimate tools, publicly available malware, and living off the land tactics. The attackers focus on Exchange servers in the attempt to deploy web shells to establish a backdoor within the target network. Once breached a target network, the threat actors attempt to steal credentials and make lateral movements. Attackers most likely linked to Iran have attacked a string of telecoms operators in the Middle East and Asia over the past 6 months, in addition to a number of IT service organizations and utility companies, reads the report published by the experts. In most attacks, The infection vector is unknown. Evidence of a possible vector was found at only one target. The suspected Screen Connect Setup MSI appeared to have been delivered in a zipped file named Special Discount Programs.zip, suggesting that it arrived in a spear phishing email. In one case analyzed by the researchers, attackers used a zip file named Special Discount Program.zip, which contained the installer for a remote desktop software application. The malicious archive was likely spread through spear phishing messages, as was just stated above. Proofpoint researchers uncovered a campaign exclusively targeting French entities and organizations with operations in France with the banking malware TinyNuke. The attackers used invoice-themed lures targeting entities in manufacturing industry, technology, finance, and other verticals. The banking malware re-emerged after its activity significantly dropped in 2019. Threat actors are using it to steal credentials and other private information and deliver additional payloads. The TinyNuke malware was first spotted in 2017, but its activity reached its peak in 2018. In the most recent campaigns, the threat actor uses invoice-themed lures purporting to be logistics, transportation, or business services entities. The malicious messages used in these campaigns contain download links pointing to a zip-compressed executable responsible for installing TinyNuke. Proofpoint researchers distinguish at least two distinct activity sets using TinyNuke based on different lure themes, command and control infrastructure, and payload deployment. The experts believe that one of these two clusters was associated with the initial TinyNuke operations, while the second one was associated with a threat actor that uses commodity tools. In the recent wave of attacks, the attackers used legitimate but compromised websites to host the payload URL. Most of the websites involved in the campaigns use the French language. Once installed, the TinyNuke loader can be used to steal sensitive data and credentials with form grabbing and web inject capabilities for popular browsers like Firefox, Internet Explorer, and Chrome, as well as to install additional payloads. A group of researchers from the University of Darmstadt, University of Brescia, CNIT, and the Secure Mobile Networking Lab have discovered security vulnerabilities in Wi-Fi chips that can be exploited to extract passwords and manipulate traffic on a Wi-Fi chip by targeting a device's Bluetooth component. According to the research paper published by the experts, modern mobile devices use separate wireless chips to manage wireless technologies such as Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and LTE. However, these chips share components and resources such as the same antenna or wireless spectrum to improve the efficiency of the devices, reducing the energy consumption and the latency in communications. The researchers explained that it is possible to use these shared resources to launch lateral privilege escalation attacks across wireless chip boundaries. The researchers demonstrated practical coexistence attacks on Broadcom, Cypress, and Silicon Labs chips deployed in billions of devices. Practical coexistence attacks demonstrated in the paper allowed the researchers to achieve Wi-Fi code execution, memory readout, and denial of service. In the attack scenario devised by the researchers, they first perform code execution on either the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi chip, then they perform lateral attacks on other chips on the same device by leveraging shared memory resources. Threat actors can execute code by exploiting an unpatched or new security issue over the air, or abusing the local operating system firmware update mechanism. Experts pointed out that some of the vulnerabilities they discovered cannot be fixed without changing the design of hardware. The research shared their findings with the chip vendors, and some of them have already addressed the issues. According to the researchers, though, fixing the identified issues has been slow and inadequate, and the most dangerous aspect of the attack remains largely unfixed. We move on to other security news. The investigation conducted by FBI on a recent data breach suffered by an Oregon healthcare organization led to the accidental revelation that the FBI believes that the HelloKitty ransomware gang, also known as Five Hands, operates out of the Ukraine. Oregon Anesthesiology Group PC, or OAG, experienced a cyber attack on July 11th, after which we were briefly locked out of our servers, reads the notice of data breach published by the Oregon Anesthesiology Group. On October 21st, the FBI notified OAG that it had seized an account belonging to HelloKitty, a Ukrainian hacking group, which contained OAG patient and employee files. The FBI believes HelloKitty exploited a vulnerability in our third-party firewall, enabling the hackers to gain entry to the network. The HelloKitty gang has been active since January 2021, and it is still active. In November, the US FBI has published a flash alert warning private organizations of the evolution of the HelloKitty ransomware, aka Five Hands. According to the alert, the ransomware gang is launching distributed denial of service attacks as part of its extortion activities. So if you recall from some episodes in the past, I informed you that ransomware gangs are now adding DDoS attacks to their sort of tool set to try to force you to pay the ransom. So they lock up your files, they exfiltrate data so that they can dangle that in front of you and say, we're going to, publish this and give it to anybody if you don't pay. And now they add on DDoS attacks. Now, the ransomware gang targets their victims' websites with DDoS attacks if they refuse to pay ransom, as I just explained. The HelloKitty ransomware group, like other ransomware gangs, implements the double extortion model. Again, like I just explained, stealing sensitive documents from victims before encrypting them. Then the threat actors threaten to leak the stolen data to force the victim to paying the ransomware. The HelloKitty, aka Five Hands gang, is known to demand varying ransom amounts in Bitcoin that are commensurate with the economic capabilities of the victim. So they basically don't say, just give me 50 million across the board. They look at how much they think you earn based on public records. Like if you earn 50 million, they might say, okay, give me 10 million or 5 million, something that they know you can pay, and it's not going to completely decimate your company, because if your company's decimated, you can't pay anyway. The group's operations use several techniques to breach targets' networks, such as exploiting sonic wall flaws like CV 2021-20016, CV 2021-20021, or CV 2021-20022, or CV 2021-2002, or using compromised credentials. The accidental revelation can now suggest the gang temporarily suspended its operations, moving its activities to another country where local police will be more indulgent, aka Ukraine. In May, US CISA also published an analysis report, AR21-126A, on the Five Hands ransomware. Anyway, the US authorities never disclosed the possible location of the gang up until this point, but now, through this revelation, it seems like they're convinced that the ransomware gang HelloKitty, again, aka Five Hands, comes out of the Ukraine. The Department of Homeland Security has launched a new bug bounty program dubbed Hack DHS that allows vetted white hat hackers to discover and report security vulnerabilities in external DHS systems. The Hack DHS bug bounty program will occur in 3 phases throughout the fiscal year 2022. During the first phase, researchers will perform remote vulnerability assessments on certain DHS external systems. In the second phase, the experts will participate in a live in-person hacking event, while in the third phase, DHS will identify and review lessons learned and plan for future bug bounties. Sounds like it's going to be a massive success. I'm kidding. It sounds horrible. So Hack DHS will use a platform created by the Department of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and will be monitored by the DHS Office of the Chief Information Officer. So basically, they're going to create this tiny little room. They created their own platform to monitor it, and they're going to let a certain amount of vetted white hat hackers in to basically do, I guess, a free assessment, or like an unpaid security assessment in phase 1, followed by a live in-person hacking event. So you're going to have these DHS agents looking over your shoulders as they see what you do to make sure you stay within bounds of some sort. What do I know? And then how much are you going to get paid? Well, participants to the Hack DHS will receive rewards between a whopping $500 and $5,000 for each reported issue, depending on its severity. Ooh, you're going to get rich. So you're going to spend your own time to do whatever assessment, and however long that takes in phase 1. And then you're going to do a live in-person hacking event with, again, agents apparently watching what you're doing, make sure you stay in bounds. And then if you find something, you're going to make $500 to $5,000. I don't think that's going to be successful. So the Hack DHS is not the only bug bounty program launched by the U.S. government and military. Okay, similarly, initiatives across the federal government include the Hack the Pentagon and Hack the Army programs. If they're all set up the same way or similarly, then I don't think they're really going to learn very much. And I don't think many people are going to participate. That just seems way too constructed versus how a lot of pen tests are technically done in this type of thing. Try to hack me. Anyway. The US CISA ordered federal agencies to address the critical Log4 shell vulnerability in the Log4j library by December 24, 2021. That's in a couple of days. Let's see if they make it or not. The order aims at preventing threat actors who could exploit the vulnerability in attacks against the government systems. The CVE 2021-442228, which you've heard I don't know how many times in this entire Cybersecurity Weekly, but this CVE flaw made the headlines last week. Of course, I think we've all heard about it after Chinese security researcher P0RZ9 publicly disclosed a proof of concept exploit for the critical remote code execution zero-day vulnerability, aka Log4 shell, that affects the Apache Log4j Java-based logging library. The impact of the issue is devastating. Thousands of organizations worldwide are potentially exposed to attacks, and security experts are already reporting exploitation attempts in the wild. Yesterday, the US CISA added 13 new vulnerabilities to the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, including the Apache Log4 shell Log4j. The U.S. agency also published an Apache Log4j vulnerability guidance that includes technical details about the vulnerability and provides mitigation guidance. As if you haven't already seen guidance or mitigation steps 1,000 times already. But CISA also recommends 3 immediate actions: enumerating internet-facing endpoints that use Log4j, ensuring that SOCs act on every alert and on affecting devices, and installing a web application firewall that automatically updates. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.